I've been thinking a lot about identity last couple weeks, and there's a bunch of different kinds of identity. Like, how well do you know yourself? You know, the heart of man is unknowable, to thy own self be true. Like, how can you know yourself? And if the heart of man is unknowable, like, is that only because so few men like try to learn about their own heart, you know, in their own mind? Why do I do the things I do? Why do I say the things I say? You know, what can you deduce from talking to me, say, for a week? What parameters can you set for my behavior that you could predict in the future? Like, I don't think he would do this. Well, he might do that. And like, how does that? So then identity is, other people have an idea of who you are, right? So the identity between what you learn about me by talking to me and maybe watching how I behave is your observation, and you're basing this on what you know about other people and what you know about yourself. So then now my identity between the two of us is like a midpoint in between the two of us. So like, you can't really know, you know, exactly how I'm going to deal with any situation. I could surprise you. I could surprise myself. And one of the reasons why I could surprise myself and why I might surprise you is because if I don't know my heart well enough, if I haven't thought about other situations that maybe I've never encountered, or situations in the past that I've encountered and then judged my own behavior, did I handle that well? Did I handle it poorly? What's the optimal way to handle that? How would I expect other people to handle it? That kind of thing. And so part of my identity comes from having, like, in my mind, role models. And my role models came from cowboy culture, from reading 25-cent paperback books, you know, about Coyote Jack, you know, riding into town and ended up helping out on a farm, and then ended up getting some property and getting his own cattle, and then marrying the rancher's daughter and running off the bandits. And you know, like, what makes a stranger part of a community so quickly? Why did the community accept him so well? Because, like, all his behaviors were predictable. He was honest, hardworking, and he looked for where work needed to be done and invested himself in it. You know, like, when sent out to collect firewood, he also chopped it and stacked it. You know, like he did more than what was expected of him at all times. And hard work in itself is its own value. Like, because, like, hard work is something that you're going to encounter for yourself and also for others. And the value of always doing the best you can for yourself and for others. If you want to, if there's someone you want to help, if there's somebody that you think like this is a part of my community, I can see that they're, like, behind on gathering firewood for the year because these kids' father went away to war or something like that, you know, for whatever reason. Their barn burned down and they've been trying to fix their barn rather than chop firewood. So, like, I'm going to lend a hand here. And you lend a hand here, and the point of that is, obviously, you want to be a good person. You want to help out other people. But selfishly, if you ever need help, that's who you want around you. And you could then tell from going out and helping some people, like chopping firewood for them, or helping them catch their cattle that they escaped. You can tell when you're helping them if they're grateful or not. You know, if they respect the time and effort that you put in. And then, you know, like, you know, whether or not, like, in the future, if my cattle get out or my barn burns down, you know, like, that I can expect these people are going to show up with food and axes and tools, and they're going to lend a hand. You know, and then the more that's valued in the community, and the more people who feel that is valuable, are the more people are going to, like, you know, we're heading west, but this seems like a nice place to live. Like, this seems like a community that I want to be a part of. I think some people, I think a lot of people actually get that sense of behavior from religion. I think that it automatically, in a way, gives you a sense of everyone you see going to your church has, without having to talk to you, you kind of like agree on some behaviors. Like, we are all unofficially signing up for these expectations of each other, for ourselves and for each other. You know, the same kind of thing, like to be honest and to be hardworking and to be loyal and to be respectful and to literally be afraid of doing things that are dishonorable or wrong or wicked, to actually feel fear of that kind of thing. Where in cowboy culture, like, the fear is, like, if you decide that you're gonna steal instead of work hard for it, then the fear then is, if people find out about that, then you can never rest. Every man's hand will be raised against you, because no one wants someone that steals around you in a small community in the middle of nowhere, because there's only so much of everything. You know, there's only so many horses, so many cattle, so many saddles. It's not like you go down to the store and, like, there's like 60 saddles to buy. So if someone comes to your barn and takes a saddle just because they don't want to work for it, they've screwed you over. You know, you have to go to a leather worker or order one or something like that, or hope someone comes through with extra. Maybe you could buy a used one. So, yeah, you don't want anyone around that doesn't kind of tactily agree to these ethics, this code of behavior. That is it. That's the thing. Like, you show up to church and you could kind of assume that you have agreed to a code of behavior. Now, obviously, like, some people are going to try to attach themselves to a group to try to make it look like they have that code of behavior, to deceive other people. But still, in a small community, that once discovered, that's just all over. That's all over with. You know, the larger the community, it's like, well, you can't kick people out of church, but we all know that you can't trust Joe not to take money out of the collection plate or something like that, or to pretend that his barn burned down when really, you know, like, yeah, yada yada yada, lie, cheat, and steal. I think that when I learn that someone doesn't have any kind of role model or a religion or a philosophy, if they're like, you know, like, they're not into Buddhism or any kind of, like, pre-studied kind of behaviors, even Stoicism or something like that. Like, if they haven't thought of any of it, like, I'm just a little bit worried they're like wet clay. You know, they haven't really firmly established who they are. And also, like, I've met a lot of people actually that literally have said, I don't want to be limited. I don't want to decide if I would do this or not do that. I don't want to decide, like, if this behavior is good or bad, because I literally, like, they're almost afraid of not giving themselves the opportunity to, like, well, sometimes it's okay to, you know, this, that, or the other thing. You know what I think that is? Like, you should always be prepared to re-examine. Buddhism teaches this, that everything, your deeply held beliefs, should always be prepared to re-examine them every morning. Ask yourself, do I still believe the sun comes up, in that direction and goes down in that direction? I'm going to double check that today. So you're not casting aside your free will. Once I type this in, it's dialed into the computer, or once I chisel this in, it's set in stone. So I think that people who are afraid to have these kinds of principles are literally afraid of not being able to have something if they don't allow themselves some wiggle room. That might not be, you could get this thing without all the hard work necessary if you do this. In my mind, that's what they're really saying. If say you find something that you've always wanted, you just find it on the ground, but you think you could probably find out who it belongs to, but if you keep quiet about it, you could keep it. If you've already decided, who doesn't want, if you lose something, you're overjoyed if someone tracks you down and gives it back to you. There's stories and movies about that kind of thing. So if you're afraid, well, what if I find the thing that I've always wanted, but it belongs to somebody else? It's well, it's not yours. You didn't earn it. And if you haven't earned it, you don't deserve it. And if you get it this way, can you really justify having it? I think in my mind, that's these wet clay people, these people that don't have a set, I would never do this, I would never do that kind of thing. And you could say to yourself, you could set these things. The thing is, if you set, I will never walk really close to the cliff, and then you get to the cliff and you're well, I'd really like to look over. Then what you do then is reassess, well, why am I afraid of the cliff? Is there a reasonable and safe way to approach the cliff edge? And you retest your decision, and test your own knowledge and your own skill. Well, can I lay down on my belly and scooch forward, or really is it really worth it? Now in retrospect, if that cliff edge is dodgy because I can't quite tell and it looks cracky and it looks flaky, and I could kind of hear stuff crumbling and stuff like that, it's just not worth it. There's places where I can see from here, where I can see farther away, I can see some cliff edges. It's got to look very similar to that. I don't need to experience it. I think it's important. To try to reassess and assess who you are at all points in time, to past behavior, current behavior, and hopeful future behavior. Remember the first time I was in a car accident, the guy was kind of freaking out, and I stayed calm, and I kept slowly repeating what we're supposed to do, and he was I'm going to call the police. I'm okay, well, you could call the police while the police are coming. We could exchange information. And he slowly settled down. He said, then he starts to cooperate, and he's how do you know how to do all this? Have you been in a lot of accidents? And I'm no, this is my first accident I've ever been in. He's well, then how do you know to do all this? I'm because I thought about it. I thought, if I'm ever in an accident, what do I need to do? Where will I keep the information? What's necessary? I need a pen and paper in there to write down the other information. I just thought in advance. You don't get in a boat and then suddenly go through the rapids and think, shit, I wish I would have brought a life vest. You think about it in advance. If I do go boating, what kinds of things will I encounter? How should I behave? What's expected of me? And am I capable of doing that kind of thing? So, yada, yada, yada.